Hello, Abnormal Investigations. This will be the second video drop for today. I hope you all enjoy this one. Should be a good one. Before I get into it, I want to let you all know that I dropped a members and Patreon video. Well, it hasn't dropped yet, but it will drop at 7 p.m. today. It's something that I've never done before. I gave some personal encounters and some raw insights to what I see going on in the community and kind of how it all ties together. It's my exact thoughts, and it's deep, and I hope that you all enjoy it. It is pretty much my thoughts uncut. So to the YouTube members and the Patreon, it will be accessible to you guys at 7 p.m. today, Central Standard Time. I look forward to your comments on it, and I'm sure some of it will be controversial, but we all have different opinions, and I look forward to seeing your opinions. Let's get on to the encounter. This sighting occurred back during the summer of 2017. I was 17 years old, and I was about to enter my senior year of high school. I lived within the town of Sheridan, Wyoming, a nice little cowboy town, even though many people here absolutely suck at driving. There's plenty of teenagers here who try to think of Sheridan as a ghetto town. It's a pretty rough town, if you ask me. Nevertheless, overall, it's a cozy little place. My encounter, however, doesn't take place within the town of Sheridan. The story I'm about to tell originates from within the Bighorn Mountain Range, a spur of mountains connected to the Rockies. The camping posse consisted of me, my cousins, who we'll call M and A, my aunt, who we'll call B, and A's friend. M was about 19 by the time of these events, and we shared a mutual fascination with cryptid spirits and aliens. A, who was about 15, had shown some interest, but nowhere near the level of intrigue that M and I had for these mysteries. My Aunt B was a Christian, a firm believer in God, and a strong believer in demons and angels, but cryptids and aliens, well, not so much. We were camped out next to a decently sized lake called Park Reservoir, which was usually a popular spot to camp at. However, it was only just us and an elderly couple that were camped at the lake that day. M and I had spent the day four-wheeling with the sandy perimeter of the reservoir and fishing for the resident rainbow, brown, and brook trout within the lake. A and her friends spent most of their time either inside the camper or just swimming. B simply just relaxed in her folding chair and enjoyed the nature, though she did spend a little bit of time four-wheeling herself. When night came, we all spent time sitting around the campfire and telling stories. The setting of the night wasn't very impressive. Clouds were blocking the sky, so we couldn't view the stars. The only visible part of the moon was the light that came barely even pierce through the clouds. M and I stayed up a bit later than the others to do some night fishing. M claimed that the moon was full, and that fishing would occur best during the time we were out on the lake. Though the biting action wasn't the best, we did manage to catch about 6 fish in the end, which consisted of 3 medium-sized rainbow trout ranging from around 12 to 13 inches, a decent-sized 14-inch brown trout, and 2 small brookies no greater than 9 inches. We kept fishing until around 11:30 that night, if I were to guess. We'd been up pretty late hoping to catch a large trout, but our hopes were never fulfilled. Nothing out of the ordinary occurred while we were out on the lake, but that would soon change not long after. M and I spent the night outside in a tent while B and A's friends slept inside the camper. We didn't mind this, however, as we preferred staying inside the tent, as it was a perfect place to talk about scary stories where we felt more vulnerable, as the only protection was a dome of fabric. Afterwards, ironically enough, we were listening to Darkness Prevails, though I can't remember which video it was nor the category, but it did keep us awake. I woke up to a piercing howl much similar to the cry of a wolf. It sounded far, but not too far, as if it came from the other side of the lake. I was excited about simply just hearing the howl because gray wolves weren't common sight on the mountains. It was probably too dark for me to see if there was a wolf somewhere around the lake, so I just savored the moment, knowing that there was a wolf in the proximity. I had tried to slip back into sleep following the howl, but my body would not allow me to. I can't explain why, but I felt uneasy. Maybe it was because of those spooky stories that Em and I had been telling. I spent the entirety of the next half hour feeling discomforted. Em was still fast asleep. I thought about walking over and waking him to tell him about the wolf's howl, but I decided I'd be better to inform him about it in the morning, as he was tucked in and sleeping very well. As I was once more ready to fall asleep, I heard rustling in the vegetation from behind our tent. My everlasting discomfort levels continued rising in increasing pace. Perhaps it was a raccoon, a mule, a deer, or maybe even a black bear. I had seen fresh bear scat earlier in the afternoon, and I wouldn't have been surprised if that bear decided that it could get an easy meal from the campground. Black bears have quite the reputation for scouring down campgrounds. And they look for leftovers from time to time, as humans can leave things behind, and we can also put ourselves in situations by doing that. My cousin had left the flashlight we used when we went night fishing in the tent, so I grabbed it and decided to investigate. Don't get me wrong, I was still very nervous. My instincts were trying to restrain me from leaving the tent. It was as if my brain were screaming, "Don't go" at me. But my curiosity had gotten the better of me. I shined the flashlight toward the direction of the disturbance, but I couldn't see anything. I didn't move very far from the tent at all. I stayed in place while slowly shining the flashlight in my circumference, hoping it would catch a glimpse of a culprit, whether it was a raccoon, a bear, but I saw absolutely nothing. I feared it was simply just a deer that had passed by and went through the brush behind me. After a quick recheck, I crawled back into the tent, being as stealthy as possible when climbing back in and zipping it back up in order not to wake Em. By this point, my uneasiness had calmed down quite a bit, and I felt as if I could manage to sleep for the rest of the night. So once more, I fell back asleep. I'd figured I slept perhaps a full hour, but I don't exactly know. All I know is that it was still pitch black outside when I was woken up to what sounded like a cooler crashing onto its side, spilling ice and soda cans which slowly rolled into the hardened soil. Immediately I felt my heart racing and my adrenaline levels building up once more, stronger and more potent than they were before. I was too afraid to get up and check out what was causing the ruckus at first, but eventually I found enough courage to grab the flashlight, which I kept with me inside my sleeping bag. As I slowly slipped out of the sleeping bag and my flashlight in my grasp, I heard the crumbling of aluminum, as if it was now digging into the bag of Cheetos I had left on the table. As quietly as possible, I unzipped the cover of the tent. I had kept my flashlight off in order to keep my location hidden, but as if that mattered, because whatever it was had already seen me and was staring at me with bright amber-colored eyes that gazed right through me. There was something very off with these eyes. They were about 6.5 feet off the ground. I found myself trembling with fear and my heart beating to the point I felt if I was going to burst. Slowly I pointed my flashlight toward the thing and pushed a switch with my thumb. What I saw will haunt me for the rest of my days. It was a huge wolf that was completely covered in ruffled jet black hair. Not only that, but it was standing on 2 legs, and had very human-like hands with fingers that ended with sharp black claws, much similar to those of a wolf or a dog's. I stood there frozen in total shock. My tightened throat wouldn't allow me to muster up any scream, and my legs wouldn't allow me to run. It was as the creature's gaze kept me locked in place. The bipedal canine-like creature twitched and pointed its ears in the opposite directions, then slightly gaped its horrendous mouth, oh my God, open to reveal butter-colored canine teeth layered with streaks of brown plaque. It had purplish gums, with black outlines above the teeth. I could smell its breath, too. It was terrible, pungent stench. It had to be its breath. Hopefully its body didn't smell that way. A stench of rotten meat that made my eyes water and my stomach nauseous. There was a foul odor that put the stench of sulfur and methane to shame. What it did next made my heart sink to the ground, an action that would leave a deep scar in my memory that would plague my nightmares for an eternity. It smiled a wide, toothy smile that spanned across the muzzle as if it knew I was terrified and it enjoyed seeing me in fear. Then before I knew it, I swerved around and took off on all fours back. It swerved around, took off on all fours back into the forest, dropping the bag of Cheetos on the ground. It's as if it weren't searching for food, but rather merely seeking to terrify someone. It knew we were there, but it didn't know it was there. I stood there like a statue, completely petrified from what I had just experienced, until I heard a voice coming from the tent. "Zach, what are you doing? Why are you awake?" Em asked. I stuttered, too afraid to reveal anything of what I had just seen. "Well, spit it out," Em said with a whisper shout. I didn't say anything furthermore, but pointed to the flashlight toward the bag of Cheetos on the ground, as well as the cooler that was knocked over. "Did a bear come by, or did you do this in order to prank me?" Em asked. I slowly looked over towards the tent. I could only see his outline of the reflecting of the skin. I didn't think he could see me too well. Besides, from the flashlight I was holding, but it still slowly shook my head from side to side. I still was afraid to say anything. I climbed back into the tent. But my thoughts I had of sleeping were quickly disposed of. I had stayed awake for the remainder of the night, and when morning came, I had woke Em up in order to tell her the story. I told her from the beginning, with the wolf howl, the rustling in the bushes, and from behind our tent to my encounter. I told him. He was just a few minutes too late, or else he would have saw it too. I thought he would have thought I was crazy, and, well, I was just over-dramatizing a bear encounter, but fortunately enough, he believed me. He said how my fear had felt too genuine, even if he felt scared for a little bit, when he saw me up in the middle of the night holding a flashlight resembling a statue. When Bee woke up and saw the mess that was created, she asked us what had happened. I had told her that a black bear came through camp last night because I knew for certain she wouldn't believe my story. We cleaned up the mess and had left for the afternoon. I'm glad that we never went back to this place, because I feel like that if we would have stayed another night, and I don't know this for sure, but I think it would have came back and probably have hurt one of us. The way the thing looked at me and the way it smiled, I will never forget. You know, I hear a lot of these encounters. One of them being a personal encounter of a friend who saw one behind my granny's house. He mentioned it smiling, and a lot of encounters I get, a lot of people mentioning, the smiling. I don't know if they smile, if it's a growl, if it's something to try to scare us off. I'm not real sure what it is. A lot of people call it a sinister smile. It may be a smile. It could be a snarl. I'm not sure. I do know that a lot of people say that they speak after they see the smile, so that would somewhat kind of make me think that maybe it is a smile. As far as not telling people what you've seen and going back to sleep, I think that's a mistake. I think that puts everybody in jeopardy. I think even if they don't believe you, you should at least tell them what you've seen. That way, they'll say they don't believe you, but in the back of their mind when they lay down, they're still going to be thinking about what you told them, and they're going to be more aware, more heightened to what's going on around them. I think that if you don't tell people, it puts people at risk. I mean, who knows? Somebody could have got up at night to get a pop, a soda, or, some chips, something to snack on, and bam, they didn't know what was waiting on them. As far as sleeping in your sleeping bag, a lot of people have reported getting pulled out of their tents in their sleeping bags. One person says he was pulled to a cave. What I do is when I go to sleep, and I'm not telling you all to do this, so don't do what I'm telling you to do, but stick what items in your sleeping bag you feel might be a necessity for survival and to find your way back, and always a way to make fire. That way, if you are drug out in your sleeping bag, you'll have those items with you. That's one of the things that I try doing. I think it's a very unique encounter. I believe leaving the Cheetos on the table was a mistake. You should always secure your food. I believe that leaving food out like that is just a temptation to cause something to come into tent or into camp, even if it is an animal or a cryptid. I think that's a mistake not to do that. And it's kind of like leaving yourself open. It's like leaving bait, in a trap. And you're going to lure something that way. And you sure don't want to lure something into camp, especially if you're asleep, with a little piece of fabric separating you from whatever's out there. But I think that sometimes we have to use common sense when we're camping to make sure that we are safe. It's always, I think, a good idea to set a boundary around your tent. They have trip alarms, they have trip flares, bells, anything to make noise of something that may be slipping through camp. With that one, guys, I hope you enjoyed this story. Thank you for the support for Hunter. The links are in the description. Your donations are helping so very much, and they're very much appreciated. Until the next one, guys, keep your head on a swivel. Don't be something's dinner, and we'll see you Friday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time on our live. You're not going to want to miss it. Where are they taking our children? We'll see you on the next one, guys.